What we're doing is first I'm getting my microphone all arranged here, so apologies for that. But I wanted to go over a couple things with you. I get a lot of questions about different innovations and what innovation is, and that's really what I want to, what I'd love for you guys to take away from this is that you too can have all kinds of different things in your wheelhouse, so to speak. And so whenever you're thinking about your work or whatever you're doing, I want you to take a step back always and think to yourself, all right, is this something that I want to have? Is it something that I want to make as part of my work? And I'm a big believer of whenever you're actually working on something, whenever you're actually out there making innovations happen, you spend time on the questions that are most important to you when you first get started. When I was doing a lot of innovation lab setup and working with a lot of companies around innovation, what we always had to work on is figuring out what were the important questions. And so today what I want to spend some time on in this webinar is some of the questions that I get a lot. And these questions I think will be helpful for you, because one of the things that you can take out of any kind of webinar like this is some common things that you might want to try whenever you're starting an innovation lab, or whenever you're working with other people who are in innovation labs, that you'll have that chance to do that. So my goal, of course, is to give you as much information as I can. So if you do have questions for me, don't hesitate to go into the chat box and post them there. I did get quite a few postings already from various social media and from email directly. So I'll do my best to cover as many of those as I can today. There's quite a few of them actually. So if I didn't get to your question, please send it to me and I'll follow up with you or do another webinar soon. Okay, I plan to do at least 2 or 3 of these a week leading up to my innovation course. All right, so let's start out. What I want to share with you is this screen here that you've got, and then you'll be able to, you'll notice here, this is just the course that we're putting together and that we're running. So this is a quick overview of that and what's being offered in that course. So teams, talking about exceptional teams in 10 days. How do you make those exceptional teams? And what is this concept of personal innovation really all about? So we'll be covering that. We'll be diving into a bunch of different areas of innovation, talking about how do you make innovation happen, how do you move innovation along via progressing, how do you refine ideas, and then how do you actually move an idea from something that you've come up with to a final product. So those are some things that we're going to cover in this class. I do really like working with folks on that section, because anytime that I have brought people into the room and we've really spent time crafting innovation, it works really well. Big companies especially, there's so many structures in place that oftentimes keep innovation from happening, but we can easily get around those with some planning and engagement. So that's how that works. Let me go back again to the screen here, and you're going to notice, just flipping over to another section, that I have quite a bit of work in this zone. You know, when you take a look at the blogs that are in part of Ideal U, you'll see that they all cover different themes. Some are innovation focused, some are design focused, others focused on lean startup or entrepreneurship or agile methodologies. My goal is always to make it as approachable as I can. There's a cool little search box over here too. If you want to check the search box out and get access to that, you can do that too. So those are the things that you have here inside of the blog area that are on the screen in front of you. So this is the blog post zone, and here's that search box that I was just talking about before. So what I'd like to do is I'd love to just chat with you for a little bit and keep any questions that you have coming to me via social media, direct message, anything. I know some people like to sort of control how those things flow, but I'm a big believer in and you letting me know what's most important for you. So I'll be doing that throughout this these questions and answers. Of course, the big question is always, what is innovation, or how do you define innovation? And there's a bunch of definitions out there. I do a lot of research on innovation and entrepreneurship. And so my work in that space comes into play. And it's nice to know that there are all these other things out there that we can work with and that we can analyze and come up with. But push comes to shove, it's just a new idea that has a direct impact somewhere. So I'm not, an innovation without an impact is just an idea that may be worked on, right? So innovations have to be brought through a whole process to where they actually have an impact in the real world. That's why you can have an innovation in almost any area. You can have an innovation in education, as long as whatever that new framework is in education actually gets applied in the real world. The same thing is true for any industry, right? You can come up with a new insurance product. And if you've created a new insurance product, the only way that's going to be an innovation is it actually shows up in the market and that insurance is sold. You can have an innovation in clothing, but only if the clothes are actually made and someone actually wears them. It doesn't have to be a huge number of people. It doesn't have to be a giant group. An innovation can only can affect just a few people. That's perfectly fine. Innovations don't have to be huge, but they do have to show up in the real world. Maybe it's an app that was developed, a technology that was developed, and someone launches it out into the App Store. That is a perfectly fine innovation. Well, so another common question is, where should I look, or what should I look for when it comes for coming up with an innovation? This is super common, and I am a believer in lean startup and lean methodologies. I also think that design thinking combined with lean can be a nice addition, and that's generally how I like to talk about it, because I like to combine the best of both of those worlds into one when I'm teaching about those two things. So I would say, if you're going to look for your ideal customer, if you're going to step out there or look for an innovation to come up with, start with your customer. Start with a problem that needs to be solved by people. That sounds easier than it actually is. Because oftentimes what we do whenever we're talking about building innovations or creating innovations is we have an idea in our head, but we don't actually check that idea with the real world. The good news is there are people out there who kind of see the trends of the world. You know, Steve Jobs was one of those people. He saw the trends of the world, and then he said, this is something that people have been wanting and asking for, because he heard other people talk about it, or he watched the trends of how people were using technology and how people were using the internet. And he said, what if there was a device that had all of this in one place, and it had the simplicity and elegance of what he believed technology should be, which is why Apple is different than other products out there. They have a big believer in that. They think it should be streamlined, simple, and easy to use. Of course, the iPhone is like crazy complicated now because you have so many things you can do with it. But still, the big belief is that's the case. Another question I get is, how do I come up with an idea? There are all kinds of tools out there. There's all kinds of places that you can work with people. I think that the best way to think of a new idea is to calm down, relax, and listen to what your mind, your body, your friends, your community is telling you. Sometimes, though, ideas can come out of really interesting places. Like you can be stuck in traffic, and something can happen to you in traffic. And an idea can pop into your head like, wow, we should have this type of cup holder in our cars, or we should have this type of air freshener in our cars because of whatever reason. That's a perfectly valid way to have innovative ideas too. The good news is if you test market a product like that with a small group of people, you can see whether it truly is a viable idea or not. How responsive are people outside of your core set of friends? Because your core set of friends, unless you're in New York City, your core set of friends, because people in New York are going to be like, oh, no, oh, that doesn't make any sense. But in other parts of the world, in other parts of the country, your core set of friends might be super supportive and be all about like, yes, this is going to be amazing. You're going to be fantastic. This product's going to be incredible. So they may actually be that way. And I would definitely relate to that too, with a lot of my close friends. That's why I would always branch out. I would take my product to a startup event, not to pitch it, but just to have it there and kind of get some informal feedback from people who don't know me, right? Or talk to a different group of people. Go to a friend's party, right? Go to a friend's party, half the people you don't know, and talk to the people that you don't know about this idea, because they're going to be much more honest than your friends are. The other question I get a lot is, what are different types of innovation that come out of it? And some of you guys have sent me some direct messages while I was on this video chat. Thanks so much for that. Keep listening, keep subscribing, and check out the information that's there on my site. Do the assessment. There's actually an innovation assessment for your team, so check out that. See what's your ideal that you would wish to happen, and where are you right now in real life, and kind of see how the assessment gives you different pieces of information that you might find helpful in setting up your teams. So the different types of innovation then are the strategic innovations that combine things that currently exist in new ways. So a strategic innovation can be something like a redesign of a process that your marketing team is doing. That's a strategic innovation. And then when you think about all the parts of that, that's where you start to get into things like, what are the mechanisms of innovation? How does innovation come into being? And which I really want to spend some time on that in the class I'm teaching, because I think the mechanisms that we put into place culturally with our teams, as well as process-wise, habits, things that we do in meetings, etc., can really build off of that. And I want them to. You should too, if you're interested in technologies, helping you and facilitating you with that process. Oftentimes what we do is we'll use an innovation mechanism and innovation platform to help us with those things. And that's one way to do it. But I've heard people just setting up the right kinds of cultures and the right kinds of environments, and they can use a simple tool like Trello or Slack to build ideas and to brainstorm things together. So it doesn't have to be complicated like some of the innovation tools out there. And it's always good if you're in a medium-sized company or a large company, you can always start out small and then come back to innovations later. People always ask about disruptive innovation. What exactly is it? You have to think about a business, right, that is done a certain way. So if the way that I buy computer mice is through a vendor who I've been in touch with my entire life, and someone sends me an email and offers to sell me mice for half as much going to a website, then the disruption is, that technology disruption is the fact that there's a website now that's doing what that personal relationship used to do for a lot less. And so that's a disruptive technology or disruptive innovation. Another disruption could be you are people are accustomed to using their one-on-one meetings in a business, in HR, to create things and to engage with their peers as well as their managers. Well, a disruptive innovation is to transform what those meetings are for a large number of people, right? So if a new director of operations comes on board and decides to change all of that, that would be a disruptive innovation if the final outcome is positive. Now, one of the best ways to make sure final outcomes are positive is you try to get as much buy-in as possible, and you make sure you run a pilot first to see what worked and what didn't work. And the good news is, if you use lean methodologies and some of the other things that I like to teach, you can pretty easily run a quick pilot in just a few weeks, see what the end results are, tweak things, run another quick pilot, even with another group of people. And these don't have to be big pilots either. So there's all kinds of ways to innovate around this. So those are some of the questions that I get. I have a whole long list of questions here that I've gotten at various different times. And I just want to thank you for spending some time with me today. I'll answer lots more questions for you if you reach out to me via email. I'll go back through my list and I'll pull some more questions out as I continue these talks on a regular basis. Feel free to download this, take a look at it, share it with friends. Thanks again, and have an amazing week.